Have you ever been playing a game and came across a mechanic that's so underpowered and barely used that you wondered why they even bothered to add it into the game in the first place? Well, I have, specifically in Dragon Quest IX, where some pieces of equipment have effects when you use them in battle, just as though they were consumable. And like any sane person, I let my intrusive thoughts win and thought to myself, could you actually beat the game like this? First, let's make the champion of this run. Perfect. Now we can take a look at the rules of this challenge. Okay, so to quickly cover the rules of this challenge, in this run we're only going to be able to deal damage using the item menu and through the passive effect of equipment. As such, the attack option is banned. Spells, abilities and coup de grace are fair game so long as they don't cause enemies to take any damage, and obviously defending can't deal damage, so that is also fine. An important distinction to make for this challenge is the different types of party member. Party members recruited from the inn in Stornoway, such as Medium here, can be fully controlled by the player. As such, all the rules of the challenge apply to them as well, which makes sense. There is, however, a second type of party member. These party members join you temporarily, and in battle you can't control them. Now, you can prevent them from attacking anything if you constantly run from fights, but I'm going to exempt them from the rules of the challenge, and you're going to see why shortly. I'll also be attempting to follow an optional challenge where I'm going to try and beat every boss with as few party members as possible. And since it's important, I'm going to quickly talk about what we can actually do in the item menu. From the item menu, we can either use a consumable or a piece of equipment. Consumables are, as the name suggests, one-time use, but they will still be very important for this challenge, as they're going to be our best source of sustainability through most of the run. Our main damaging option is going to be from our equipment, as they have infinite uses, which means we don't have to worry about running out of damage. Equipment is also very useful due to the powerful passive effects found on some items, and again, this will be very important in this run. With that out the way, let's get into the run. Upon starting the run, we find ourselves in Angel Falls, and already we have a major issue. Due to a recent earthquake, the only way out of Angel Falls is blocked by a landslide. Since the only way to clear the landslide is by beating the first boss, we only have access to the items in Angel Falls in order to beat said boss. Visiting the town shop, we find that it has no usable equipment, as well as no damage dealing consumables. The nearby monsters also offer little help, dropping items such as boxer shorts and leather hats. Not that we can beat any monsters given our inability to deal any damage. The only consumables we have right now are some medicinal herbs, tangle web, and a single vial of holy water that I got from the observatory, and all that does is stop monsters from seeing you in the overworld. Except that's not quite true. If you've played Dragon Quest IX before, you might have encountered a quest which asks you to defeat an enemy using holy water. That's right, holy water actually deals damage to monsters, just like in real life. Taking another look at the monster loot table, we can find that Teeny Sanguinis actually drop holy water at a rate of 1 in 64. Although, since we would need to use the file to defeat a Teeny Sanguini in the first place, this doesn't actually help us get any more. Luckily, my specific wording of the rules saves the run. If we progress the story, we can get Ivor to join our party. Ivor is special, as like Aquila from the tutorial, he's a temporary party member, meaning he's exempt from the rules of this challenge. So, with Ivor by our side, we can proceed to take out a few dozen Teeny Sanguinis until we have a total of 8 holy waters. Now, while farming 7 more holy waters did take quite a bit of time, it also gave us a decent amount of experience and gold, meaning we can kit ourselves out with some better gear. With our 8 holy waters and new armour, we should be ready to take on the Hexagoon. The Hexagoon has 93 health and holy water deals between 12 and 15 damage. So if you can do some basic maths, you'll see that 8 holy waters will always deal enough damage to take him out. All we need to worry about is actually surviving. But since the Hexagoon doesn't really deal that much damage, we don't actually have to worry about that. While the rest of the fight plays in the background, I want to talk a bit about skill points. Since we've reached level 9, we have 12 skill points available. You can invest these points into one of 5 trees depending on your class. After investing enough skill points in a tree, you'll unlock new skills, abilities, and sometimes stat boosts. We're going to invest our points into the shield tree to get a bonus 2% block chance, and we're going to continue to invest in the shield tree until we get that 6% total block chance boost. As I said earlier, the Hexagoon is a really easy boss. It only took a minute and a half to beat him, and he didn't deal enough damage to force us to heal, letting us freely use our Holy Waters for a turn 8 victory. With the landslide cleared, we can head to Stornoway and finally buy Holy Water from a shop. Although, given that we already need to fill our inventory with Holy Water just to beat the first boss, we really need to find some usable equipment. And luck would have it, we also get access to our first piece of equipment, the Wizard Staff. This wand, despite the name, deals 12 to 16 fire damage to one enemy. Unfortunately, as we're a minstrel, we can't use it right now. Instead, in order to use it, we can head to the inn and recruit a priest. We recruited a priest instead of a mage due to priests having higher natural bulk, as well as access to healing and support spells. They're also able to wear more protective armour than mages, which further helps their staying power. After a bit of time spent training, Smalls reached level 11 and Medium's at level 8. We should be ready for the next fight, the White Knight. The White Knight has 296 health and takes 25% more damage from fire attacks, boosting our Wizard Staff to 15 to 20 damage per turn. The main threat of this fight is that the White Knight can heal himself, the first of a handful of bosses that can do so. Luckily, he only heals around 30 health, which is only 2 turns of damage. Our party has enough bulk that his attacks aren't too dangerous, and since both party members can cast heal, we can easily heal off any damage we do take. With that in mind, I also made the call to have Small bring 8 Holy Waters to get some extra damage in and speed up the fight. Beating the White Knight doesn't unlock any new locations, so we can move straight on to Morag. Morag is a noticeably harder fight. She has around 450 health and isn't weak to fire damage. We get some solace in her 25% weakness to light damage, so once again we're bringing some Holy Water with Small. I would have given Medium Holy Water as well, but I didn't actually know what damage type it dealt at this point, as it just isn't anywhere online. Most places don't even mention that it deals damage, since why would you want to use it for that? Like the White Knight, Morag can heal herself, although this time it's only for around 2 to 3 health, so we really don't care about it. The main threat is her Witch's Gaze, which deals 12 damage to both party members with a chance to paralyse. While paralysed, the character is unable to act for multiple turns and takes 50% more damage from her Victimizer attack. We can use items and spells to remove paralysis, but it wears off on its own and it really works out not to be worth curing, so we just don't. While one party member getting paralysed is bad for us, especially if it's Medium that gets paralysed, there is a chance that both characters get paralysed, in which case it's best to reset as we just don't have enough health to wait out the paralysis without someone dying. Beating Morag unlocks Alchemy back in Stornoway and gives us access to Coffinwell. Alchemy is probably the most important thing for this challenge, as well as in the game in general. In Coffinwell we can get a new weapon, the Staff of Sentencing. This wand, again with the names, deals 8 to 24 wind damage to a group of enemies. Again, it's a wand, so Small can't use it. Other than that, we don't get access to much beyond some better armour. Also worth noting is that this is the first area where you get access to metal slimes. Normally this would be a great way to level up, but we can't beat metal slimes. See, metal slimes are actually immune to spells, and wouldn't you know it, but our attacks are treated as spells, without benefiting from any of the mechanics that would normally power up spells. So grinding in this challenge takes a lot longer than it normally would. With that in mind, we spend a bit of time leveling up and getting some money for better gear before facing the Raging Contagion. The Raging Contagion is a really tough fight. He's the first boss in the game that can attack twice per turn, a trait that basically every boss from this point on shares. He also has 696 health, and if by now you haven't noticed, our damage hasn't changed since the start of the game, despite bosses getting a lot tankier. This is the reason why we want to focus on survivability so much. The boss fights in this challenge begin taking a long time to beat, so we need to be able to survive a long time to even have a chance at winning. The only real upside of this fight is that the Raging Contagion can't heal himself, although he does love to inflict status conditions on us like sleep or poison, as well as reducing our defense with Kasap. As I just mentioned, these fights start taking a long time to beat, which means that poison is a very dangerous status condition. While we only take around 4 or 5 damage each turn from it, the fact that the fights could last upwards of 50 turns means that over the whole fight, that's around 200 to 250 damage that we need to heal, taking valuable turns away from dealing damage and slowing the fight down further. And despite just unlocking it, we won't be using the Staff of Sentencing for this fight, as the Raging Contagion takes 25% less damage from wind attacks. He's also weak to fire and light, so the Wizard Staff and Holy Water actually deal more damage than the Staff of Sentencing. The wide damage range of the Staff of Sentencing also means that our damage with it is really inconsistent, which I'd rather avoid. Just to emphasise how long these fights are getting, this one took 52 turns. Boss 4 took 52 turns. Boss 1 took 8. Our damage is stagnating while the bosses just get stronger and stronger. It is not looking good for us, and it's also why this video is so long. With the Raging Contagion defeated, we get warped outside Alltrade's Abbey. This is actually quite interesting for us as we have a choice for our next boss. Either we can fight the Master of None, or Leviathan. Fighting Leviathan unlocks more of the map, while fighting the Master of None lets us change our class. Unlocking more of the map would potentially get us access to more usable equipment, as well as getting us better armour. However, if we get the ability to change our class, then we could have Small use any of the weapons we have had access to up to this point. Also worth noting is that if we change class, then we get more options for where we spend our skill points. Most importantly, the unique skill trees of each class, which can be very powerful. We also now have access to the materials needed to make a new weapon with alchemy, the Foan Fan. The Foan Fan functions identically to the Staff of Sentencing for this challenge, but because it's a fan, Small can use it without needing to change class, which would let us take Medium out of the party for our bonus challenge. In an attempt to get down to one party member for our next boss, I spent 2.5 hours trying to get the materials to make a Foan Fan, with no success. We need 1 Flurry Feather with a drop rate of 1 in 32 from Chimeras, and 1 Agility Ring with a 1 in 128 drop rate from Cyclowns. So I just got impatient and decided to fight the Master of None with 2 party members. The main reason to do this is to change Small to a thief after the fight, and get the half-inch ability, which lets us steal items from enemies and massively speed up the resource gathering, especially for the Foan Fan. So, for the purpose of our bonus challenge, this is one boss that we have failed on, and you could fight with 1 party member. The Master of None has 796 health, and takes half damage from wind attacks, so once again we are using the Wizard Staff. It might have been a blessing in disguise that I was so unlucky in getting the materials for the Foan Fan. The Master of None can actually deal a decent amount of damage with his lightning attack, around 15 to 25 to all party members. He can also cast Whoosh, which deals around 10 damage, if that, to all party members. However, he's more likely to cast critical spells, increasing the damage of his Whoosh up to around 30, and probably at least doubling the length of the animation. Just like the Raging Contagion, the Master of None can attack twice per turn, and honestly, from this point on, unless I say otherwise, just assume that every boss can attack twice per turn. Another annoying thing that Master of None can do is cast Drain Magic, massively reducing our available cast of heal. Fortunately, the Master of None also likes to waste his turns buffing his defense and doing his basic attack, and if he doesn't get a critical Whoosh, then he doesn't deal an unmanageable amount of damage. So because of his inconsistent damage output, we're able to win on our first attempt by playing carefully and bringing magic waters to restore our MP. With Small now able to become a thief, we level up a bit and get the half-inch ability, then quickly get our Foan Fan. Now we can let Medium rest and take on the Leviathan. Leviathan has a monstrous 1256 health, but thankfully he doesn't resist any damage types. He only attacks once per turn, so we should be safe so long as we're careful with our health. Is what I would say. If he wasn't also really strong, his basic attack deals about 25 damage right now, with his tidal wave close to 40 damage. We can't out-heal that with just the heal spell, and even if we only had to worry about his basic attack, we would still have to heal basically every turn. Before we try again, I'm going to get some more materials with half-inch to make some better gear, and level up to 21 to unlock mid-heal, letting us heal for 75 health instead of 30 at only twice the MP cost. I haven't actually covered what armour I had for the other bosses, It's basically just been the best available in shops, sometimes a bit worse. But since I've used alchemy to gear up here, I'll quickly cover what I have. We're wearing a Gigasteel shield, helmet, gauntlets, kneecaps and boots, as well as a fur vest and a gold rosary. On our next attempt we can see how good our equipment is, with Leviathan's attacks now dealing about half as much damage. Except the tidal wave, because that ignores defense. It's not the last attack that we'll see that does this, and they're really annoying to deal with as we don't really have a way to reduce the damage that they deal, which means that they really impact on our survivability in fights where they're present. There isn't much strategy here. Leviathan's a really fair boss and doesn't inflict status conditions, so we could just heal when we're low and attack when we're not. We ended up winning on our third attempt after 97 turns and about 16 minutes. Our damage output is really starting to suck, and the bosses are just going to get even tankier as we keep going. With Leviathan defeated, we can take the ferry over to Slurry Quay. This area unlocks one new weapon. In Durbridge we can get the Cautery Sword, which deals 6 to 10 fire damage to all enemies. It sucks. We're never gonna use it. Instead, the best stuff in this section is just armour upgrades. There's also some new alchemy ingredients which is nice and will be helpful later. We upgrade to a white shield and platinum mail, which boosts our block rate to 7% and our defense to 181. With this, we should be ready to face our next boss, Tyrantula. Tyrantula has less health than Leviathan with only 1098, but she takes 25% less damage from wind attacks. This means that our damage output is dropped to 6 to 18 instead of 8 to 24. Even with that damage drop, we still do better damage than the Cautery Sword, which tells you a lot about how bad it is. And in case you thought it might be better to try using the Wizard Staff, Tyrantula also resists fire, so it's not worth it. Tyrantula's basic attack and wind sickles do like 2 damage, so we want her to use them whenever possible. But unfortunately, her Venom Missile ignores defense and hits for around 25 damage. But that's not all. Venom Missile also has a chance to poison, which can be increased by Eerie Light, and with our higher health pool it now deals around 7 damage per turn. Combine this with Sticky Web, which immobilises us for a turn, and this fight is a wash. With previous bosses who could immobilise us, we didn't really care because they had to do that instead of dealing damage, so it worked out in our favour most of the time, and at worst it was just a wasted turn. But because Tyrantula can immobilise us and still deal damage to us, it becomes a real threat. Coupled with the poison damage, and it goes from being an inconsequential effect to being the most impactful thing in the whole fight. Now, I did try a few more times, but we need to go back to the drawing board. Let's break down the issues with the fight and see what we can do about them. First, the fight takes a long time. This burns through our resources and lets the poison damage add up. We can't get any new weapons right now, so this isn't something we can deal with. Second, Tyrantula likes to combo Venom Missile with Sticky Web to hit hard and stop us from healing, with the added downside of poisoning us. There is something we can do to help with this, but it doesn't completely remove the issue, and I end up not needing to use it, although I kind of wish I had, looking back on it now. Third, the poison that chips us down throughout the fight forces us to heal more often, which gives us less time to deal damage. This increased reliance on healing is also dangerous because of Sticky Web. Thankfully, we can actually deal with the poison completely. We're going to use some more alchemy and make a contraband. This accessory makes the wearer immune to poison. Specifically, it gives a 100% resist to effects that inflict poison rather than actual immunity. It doesn't seem that different, and functionally it isn't for poison, but there are counterparts to the contraband for other status conditions where it does matter, namely the Rousing Ring and Sleep, but I'll talk about that later. We also get to level 24, which lets us get our 6% block chance boost from the shield tree, meaning we'll get hit a bit less often. We can invest our skill points elsewhere, but I had a plan for later that ended up not working out, so I keep investing in the shield tree for that. Again, I'll talk about it later on. With these upgrades, let's give the fight a few more tries before looking at any other options. On the first attempt back, I ran out of MP and lost. I tried not bringing any magic water to reduce the time spent navigating the menu because each attempt was taking like half an hour and I was looking for any way to speed up attempts. Not bringing magic water also prevents me from making mistakes, like using my magic water when I don't need to instead of attacking, and I actually reset a couple of attempts because of mistakes like that, since I wanted to maximise every magic water just in case it mattered. Also, magic water is just really expensive and I don't want to waste any. The next few attempts all went surprisingly well, with the biggest issue being Tyrantula moving before us and taking me out before I had a chance to heal. This is partly my fault for getting greedy and not healing soon enough, as I was trying to work out thresholds for when I needed to heal, and so some of those losses were because of that. The rest were because I got immobilised when I tried to heal and then got outsped and killed. Finally, on attempt 9, I managed to take out Tyrantula without any major changes to the strategy. I'd worked out when I needed to heal to avoid being outsped and killed, and so the fight became a battle of attrition. I did resort to using speed up to save some time on the attempts, but the fight still took 15 minutes. If I didn't use speed up, it would probably have been closer to around half an hour to 45 minutes based on my earlier attempts. Now that we've beaten Tyrantula, we can make the biggest progression jump in the entire game by unlocking the ship. This lets us sail the 7 seas in search of alchemy ingredients to make more weapons, armour and accessories. Now this is probably the biggest part of the game and is absolutely the most confusing and busy, so in an attempt to keep things clear and concise, I'm going to cover everything I did in 3 sections. They are gathering, crafting and everything else. They should be pretty self-explanatory, so let's start with gathering. Our first stop is at Gleba, where we get some Resurrock, Brighton Rock, Evencloth, Glass Frit, Magic Mittens, Magic Armour, and 2 Sandstorm Spears. Next, we go to the Calig Coast to get some more Resurrock, as well as some Rock Bomb Shards. We won't be using these in battle, unfortunately. After that, we sail to Batsareg to pick up some Nectar, Mithril Ore, a Valkyrie Sword, and a Sleepy Stick. We then take a quick jog over to Snowberia and get some Mirror Stone, Ice Crystals, Narspicius, and Thunderballs. We head back to Bloomingdale to get a Stolos' Staff, and lastly, we circumnavigate the map to grab some more Mirror Stone from the Wormneck. From this point forward, assume that I will constantly be gathering more of all of these items except the weapons and armour for more crafting later on. Now for the crafting. We make 2 enchanted stones and an ethereal stone which we use to upgrade our magic mittens to enchanted gloves and then to ethereal gloves. These give 15 defense, 10 magical might and mending, as well as reducing the damage we take from fire, ice, wind, lightning and dark attacks by 10%. This elemental resistance is basically the only way to reduce the damage from attacks that ignore defense, but it's not always applicable. Next, we upgrade our white shield to a white knight's shield. This gives us 25 defense, 4% block chance and reduces damage from dark attacks by 10%, as well as fire and ice attacks by 5% each. I would have liked to upgrade this to the silver shield for 7 more defense, 2% more block chance and better elemental protection, but I needed to wait for more mithril ore to spawn, so I just left it for now. After this, we combine our contraband with a sober ring and a rousing ring to make a Catholicon ring. We then upgrade our magic armour to mirror armour and combine that with the Catholicon ring to make a suit of catoptric armour. This is pretty much the best armour in the game, at least before the post game and without having to spend a bunch of time in grottos. This gives us 60 defense and a 20% chance to reflect all spells. We upgrade our Valkyrie sword to a Fireblade, which is our new best weapon, dealing 23 to 33 fire damage to all enemies. Now, don't get me wrong, that's a really nice upgrade. The worst damage we can do now is basically the best we could do before. But looking at the other weapons available to us, the damage really doesn't get any better than this. So this is as good as we can do for the rest of the run, while the bosses just get more and more health. For comparison, a character at this stage of the game could easily do upwards of 100 damage in a single turn. If they spent a few turns setting up, then they could probably deal like 500 or 600 damage. And since it's expected that players are dealing a lot of damage by this point of the game, the bosses from here on out are designed with that in mind. As an extra option, we upgrade our Stolas staff to a Magma staff. This deals 20 to 30 lightning damage to all enemies and is going to be really important throughout the rest of this challenge. And lastly, we make the Life Bracer, the hands down best accessory in the game. This heals the wearer by 25 health at the end of each turn. Now, this might not seem like a lot over the course of a long fight, it adds up, and since we deal so little damage, all of our fights from here on out are long. Take our Leviathan fight for example. If we had a Life Bracer for that fight, we would have healed a maximum of 2,400 health. Also, if an enemy is unable to deal more than 25 damage per turn, then it could never beat us while we wear a Life Bracer, letting us focus on dealing damage and reducing the time that fights take. Now for everything else. In Gleba, we also grab a magic key. This lets us unlock the purple doors scattered throughout the game, and in Swine Dimples we use that magic key to get a pair of red tights. We change class to a warrior and level up until we unlock the Whipping Boy skill. We then add Medium back to our party and travel to Gleba to meet Brunhild. Brunhild is a quest giver and she tasks us with protecting our party members 10 times with the Whipping Boy ability while fighting in the desert outside Gleba. As a reward for completing this quest, we unlock a new class, the Paladin. With that in mind, we return Medium to the Quester's Rest and change Small's class to Paladin. We kit Small out with all the same gear except his weapon, because Paladins can't use swords, so we need to use the Magma Staff instead, and it's one of the main reasons why we made it. In Dragon Quest IX, there are 12 classes. 6 are available from the start, with 6 more unlocking throughout the game as you complete quests like Brunhild. These additional classes are often seen as upgraded or improved versions of the initial classes, and I like to call them prestige classes. Of the 6 prestige classes, the Paladin is the only one whose quest can be completed while following the rules of this challenge. The other 5 all need us to attack enemies. This means that for this challenge we only have access to 7 total classes. Fortunately for us, the Paladin is arguably the best class in the game, and will be our go-to option for most fights moving forward due to its insane natural bulk, including the highest natural health and second highest natural defense of any class. It's also able to cast healing and support spells just like the Priest. We then get to level 17, investing all our points into Virtue, which gives us 10 defense and 30 magical mending. This next section is going to be a bunch of bosses back to back, starting with the Dreadmaster. The Dreadmaster has 1680 health and takes neutral damage from all damage types, meaning we're stuck with our default 20 to 30 damage. He can increase his tension with Psych Up, which would normally reduce the damage he takes and increase the damage he deals, but our damage is really weird and ignores tension as well as pretty much every stat change, so all tension actually does is increase the damage he deals. Now, you might think that we're severely underleveled for this fight, and realistically we are, with most players averaging a party of 4 in the mid to late 20s, and even then they can find the fight quite difficult. However, as a Paladin we can cast Buff, increasing our defense and rendering the Dreadmaster's normal attack and double trouble attack useless. Even with 2 tension boosts, the Dreadmaster's normal attack only deals 8 damage while we have Buff active. The real threat comes from his spells, Crackle and Zammel. Crackle deals around 25 damage, which if you remember is the same amount that our Life Bracer heals us each turn. Zammel also deals around 25 damage. If the Dreadmaster has levels of tension, then his spells can deal around 50 damage, which is a real threat. Our Life Bracer lets us heal half of that at the end of the turn, but this can whittle us down over time. This is where a few things help slide the fight in our favour. Every time the Dreadmaster casts a spell, there's a 20% chance it gets reflected, as well as a 10% chance we block it. Now, I don't actually know which is calculated first, but around a third of the time we shouldn't get affected by his spells. If we reflect a spell, we shave some time off the fight, making it more likely that we survive. We can also use our coup de grace, Night Watch. This enrages all enemies and makes us invulnerable for a few turns, during which we can heal from our Life Bracer, or with heal if we're low enough, and deal damage. Again, this is probably the best coup de grace and another reason why Paladin is so strong. With all of this combined, we end up not really being in danger during this fight, and while we do get low at some points, we don't end up needing to heal ourselves. We didn't bring any magic waters either, and still ended the fight with 13 MP left. All in all, we beat the Dreadmaster on our first attempt, taking around 15 minutes without speed up. Next, Garthgoyle. We could have fought Garthgoyle before Tyrantula, however we wouldn't have unlocked anything from it, so because of that I normally leave it until later, or honestly just forget he exists. I think the first time I played the game I didn't even find him until I couldn't progress further, just because the part of the map he's in is kinda out of the way. Anyway, Garthgoyle has 1054 health, which is fairly respectable. It's on par with Tyrantula, so the fight should take a bit of time to beat. What? Yeah, so it turns out that Garthgoyle can't do any damage to us. We don't need to cast buff or anything, our life bracer's just enough to keep us at full health throughout the fight. So instead, I'm going to use this time to give some advice to anyone that wants to give the game a try after watching this video. And you should, it's a pretty good game. So, while I was reading up on what level people were attempting Dreadmaster, I saw a lot of people struggling even into the low 30s and asking for advice. Now, the best advice I can give is to always have a dedicated healer. A lot of those people that were struggling with the Dreadmaster had parties with a bunch of martial characters, warriors, martial artists, thieves, and no real spellcasters outside of their main character who they just kept as a minstrel. Don't do that, it's bad. When you first unlock extra party members in Stornoway, the game pre-generates a warrior, priest and mage, and it's probably the best lineup for most of the game. You could maybe swap the mage or the warrior to something else, but keep the priest, they're really good. Also, make as much use of alchemy as you can, explore the map, gather resources, make life bracers for your party. Start with your healer first, upgrade your gear, invest in the shield tree first for all your characters, change your characters' classes to get a bunch of skill points without having to grind too much. With that said, Garthgoyle took about 11 minutes without speed up. Up next, it's the Grand Lazier. To speed up this fight, let's make use of his ice weakness. We can craft an Icicle Dirk, which deals the most damage of any weapon in this challenge, 25 to 35 ice damage. With the Grand Lazier's 25% weakness to ice damage, this goes up to about 31 to 44 damage. Because this is a dagger, we do need to switch class to a class that can use daggers. We'll choose the warrior, as they're a very tanky class and we want to put our skill points into their courage tree. We also already have some levels as a warrior due to the paladin quest. We get up to level 21 because we don't have as much bulk as a paladin and we can't cast any spells, and just get into the fight. Now, I'm so confident about this fight that I didn't heal before starting. The Grand Lazier has 1276 health, which is a hefty amount, but he only attacks once per turn. All of the Grand Lazier's attacks deal around 20 to 25 damage, so our life bracer could just keep us fully healed. We just need to whittle away at his health, no strategy needed, and because he only attacks once per turn, his Warcry is just an opportunity for us to heal, or deal damage if it fails. We won on our first attempt in, again, about 11 minutes. On our way to our next boss, Lurstus Naris, we make a few upgrades by getting a silver shield and a mithril helm. Our best weapon here is still the Icicle Dirk, so we stick to warrior and reach level 23 before the fight. Lurstus Naris has 1562 health and she's weak to ice. Her basic attack steals MP, but we don't care about that because Unga Bunga warrior no need MP. Also, she does 1 damage. The only real damage she can deal is with Boom, but that's still only around 25 damage. Also, we have a 20% chance to reflect it because Catoptric Armor's busted. The fight's really more of the same, just chipping away at big health pools with her tiny damage. And with that, we've finished the mid-game. We can head aboard the Starfleet Express and begin our journey back to the observatory, only to get taken out by the military air defence systems of the Gittish Empire. We crash land in Wormwood Creek, and while we could get here before anyway, nobody would talk to us because they're racist. Now, however, they will talk to us because of a kid, and with that we get access to some new shops. Not that I buy anything here, as we already have much better gear. We progress the main story, meet Serena, find her necklace and enter the Bowhole. We swap back to the Paladin and take the time to level up a bit before our next boss, Gdrongo. Although it would be nice if we could have fought the liquid metal slimes in the Bowhole to level up, but no! we can't damage them. Yeah, so Gadrongo is a monster. He has 2000 health, an attack that paralyzes, an attack that damages us, and has a chance to immobilize us. He can even mess with our damage with Glockenspiel while still dealing damage to us. He also has a ground pound move which ignores defense and deals around 35 to 40 damage. But worst of all, the critical hits. We get one shot from full health 100% of the time. We can try casting Buff to reduce his damage, but it's not worth it. He only deals around 20 damage as is, so we can just heal that with our Life Bracer, and Buff doesn't reduce critical hit damage. I have a few things that I want to try for this fight, so first let's just do the simplest one and get our health up a bit. We can do this by changing to the Thief and Martial Artist, leveling up and investing skill points into their unique skill trees, giving us an extra 50 max health. Next, I want to take a look at Swine Dimples. When we beat the Dreadmaster, the teachers came back from their annual conference. These teachers offer quests for each weapon and shields, which is why I kept putting points into the shield tree. Each teacher offers 2 quests, with the second shield quest giving us a book that protects the party member that holds it from critical hits. Perfect! We do need to get the shield tree to 100 points, but that's not that hard. Oh. Oh no. So this is impossible. Glockenspiel does damage, so it's banned in this challenge. The enemies are also technically unavailable right now unless we want to spend ages doing grottos, which, no. So there goes that solution. Thankfully, with our extra health, we can actually survive a critical hit now, and I think I know how to punish Gadrongo for using his critical hits. Spiked Armour. Spiked Armour has a 20% chance to reflect the damage that we take to the enemy. Sounds like a melee counterpart to the Mirror Armour. Now, does that sound too strong? Well, the developers clearly thought so, because it only reflects 20% of the damage we take. What this means is that instead of reflecting around 20% of the damage you take across a battle, you actually reflect around 4% of the damage. Spiked Armour also has worse defense than Catoptric Armour, so after one attempt with the Spiked Armour, I gave up. Now, while it may seem like the critical hits are still the biggest challenge of this fight, and they also give us a way to win. When we get hit by a critical hit, most of the time our coup de grace gets charged up. This is because the coup de grace meter, which is invisible, fills whenever you take damage. The more damage you take, the more it fills up. Since our coup de grace, Night Watch, basically gives us a few free turns to do whatever we want, if we survive getting crit, we can easily heal back to near enough full health. This means that for the most part, the fight's actually quite safe now, except the times where we don't get Night Watch after being crit. On our 4th attempt, we do manage to take down Gadrongo after a 19-minute fight. With the way to Upover restored, we head on down and summit the Magmaroo to find our next boss, Graynarl. Now, despite being a legendary dragon, he is a really easy boss. His 50% weakness to ice means that his 2280 health isn't actually that hard to chew through, and we end up dealing around 50 damage per turn. His most dangerous move is Blinding Light, which deals upwards of 60 damage, but everything else deals 25 at most, so we can offset them with our Life Bracer. Even though we swap to a warrior to use the Icicle Dark, and as a result can't heal ourselves outside of the Life Bracer, we managed to beat the fight on our first attempt, and it only took about 10 minutes. That really shows how impactful our low damage output is, as well as how much time we lose when we need to heal constantly. With Graynarl subdued, we get a free set of armour, get on his back, and take off it to face the Gittish Empire, and then get shot out of the sky again and arrested for repeated airspace violations. We awake in the Gortrus. Not much happens here outside of this one mandatory fight that took like half an hour because they kept calling in help from Cure Slimes, so I couldn't actually kill anything for ages, and had to swap weapons to control how much health the enemies had as well as how much MP they had. After burning through the Cure Slime's MP, I could take out the main guy, then clean up the fight. So let's just get to the boss, Gorham Hog. Now, do you remember how hard Gadrongo was? Well, Gorham Hog is just Super Saiyan Gadrongo. Their names even both start with a G. Like Gadrongo, Gorham Hog is a bulky boss who hits hard. He has an attack that bypasses defense and hits us for around 60 damage, as well as a guaranteed critical hit. Now, just because he's a more powerful Gadrongo, it doesn't mean that our strategy from Gadrongo won't work. And me, being the stubborn idiot that I am, first tried going in as a warrior, because Gorham Hog is weak to ice. Now that obviously didn't work, and for some reason I tried it a few times, probably because when I play the game normally he is a really easy fight. Next I'd swapped back to a paladin, tried a few more times, but it still wasn't working. Now there was a strategy that I could have used here and with Gadrongo, but Rock for Brains here just forgot about its existence. Instead, I leveled up a bit and kept smashing my head into the brick wall of a fight until I won. After Gorham Hog, we have Hootingham Gore, that guy that shot us out of the sky the first time. Anyway, this fight is another nightmare. Hootingham Gore has two cronies joining him, and they just love getting in the way. Despite Hootingham Gore being weak to lightning damage, the bad karmas end up blocking a bunch of our attacks. The only upside is that we can hit every enemy at once with our magma staff. The issue is that bad karmas take half damage from lightning, so they end up sticking around for about as long as Hootingham Gore himself. They also have a nasty habit of lowering our defense and then shredding us. Now, the wiki says that Hootingham Gore has low health, and for a normal playthrough, sure, but our damage hasn't improved since we got the ship, and this knockoff Big Bird has more health than Gadrongo. Not by much, but Gadrongo was only 3 bosses ago, and now his health pool is considered low. Hootingham Gore is also full of tricks, such as having an increased rate of critical spells, being able to reduce our resistance to spells with spooky aura, leading to us taking a ton of damage, putting us to sleep, and confusing us, which in the worst case can cause us to get paralysed as well. Luckily, our Catoptric armour can bounce Hootingham Gore's spells back at him. Only issue is he takes half damage from wind, so a lot of the time it ends up dealing less damage than their basic attack. All of this combined leads to a ton of stuff to manage in this fight. We need to focus on dealing with the bad karmas, managing our health, managing our debuffs, managing our MP, all while still trying to deal damage to Hootingham Gore. Now, we could try using buff and magic barrier to reduce the damage we take, but both can be countered, don't last long enough, and eat up turns where we could be dealing damage or healing, as well as using our precious MP. Instead, we can react to the stat drops with the Mens Sana ability. This removes all negative status effects from the user, so if we wait until either one stat drops by 2 stages or both stats are lowered, we can more efficiently manage our MP and turns. Now that we've got a solution of sorts to that issue, we can turn to the damage problem. Honestly, there's not much we can do here, except the strategy that I should have used for Gorham Hog, because it would have worked here as well. Next boss, I promise. Now, as I mentioned when we were dealing with Tyrantula, the Rousing Ring protects against sleep, and some of you might be screaming at me to use it to prevent getting slept. There are 2 issues with that. First, it would mean no Life Bracer, which is a really big downside of basically every other accessory choice. Second, it doesn't work. Now, this is that one edge case where these accessories not giving us true immunity actually matters. See, the Rousing Ring gives us a 100% dispel chance against snooze. This means that if something cast snooze on us, or had an attack that was programmed to be treated as snooze, then we wouldn't be affected by it. However, Hootingham Gore's lullaby effect isn't considered a snooze effect, it just puts you to sleep. Since it isn't treated as a snooze effect, the Rousing Ring does nothing against it, even though it's the only move where it would even matter for us. So without any other strategies or tactics to use, we just bashed our head against Tootingham Gore until we won, and can move on to Goresby Purvis. This is the fight where I actually use the strategy I've been alluding to and stop brute forcing fights. It's also a fight where it doesn't work flawlessly like it would have with the last few fights, and it's the last fight where we can really make use of it without having to worry about Disruptive Wave. What a genius I am to remember a mechanic as soon as it becomes basically useless. In terms of health, Goresby Purvis falls right in between the other two Triumvirate members with 2306 health. He's also weak to lightning, which is nice. The main threat of this fight is his guaranteed crit move, as well as his Skyward Slash, which can immobilise you for 1 turn. Now, it's time to reveal my secret technique that makes this fight a complete joke, and would have done the same for Gadrongo, Gorham Hog, and Tootingham Gore, although to a lesser extent because of Lullaby, as well as basically every boss since the Master of None. That technique is Tension. You might remember me talking about Tension with the Dreadmaster and how it normally reduces the damage he takes. Well, we can also make use of this, and with Max Tension, we can reduce Goresby Purvis's critical hit from a devastating 230 damage to a measly nothing. Because in an effort to spite me and the making of this video, Goresby Purvis stopped using Hatchet Man after I reached Max Tension. Anyway, Tension doesn't really affect crits until you hit Max Tension, but it also reduces the damage from attacks that ignore defense, which would have been nice ages ago. It also affects spells and breath attacks. It's just an across the board damage reduction, although I don't know how much exactly, but it really doesn't matter. Now, the main threat of the fight becomes Skyward Slash, as when you get immobilised, you lose your tension. This would cripple our attempts and force us to spend at least 4 turns getting our tension back, and despite our max tension, we can still get hit, and any hit is a chance to get immobilised. Let's fix that. If we cast Buff to reduce the damage we would take, it goes below 1. We no longer get hit. Problem solved. As long as we stay on top of buff wearing out, we can never get hit outside the critical hit, which once again, Goresby Purvis refused to use. So even though those other fights had ways to immobilise us as well, buff would have dealt with them just the same. Overall, really easy fight. As I said, if I'd used tension earlier, then Gadrongo and Gorham Hog would have been just as easy. But unfortunately, just as soon as I find tension, I lose it. With our next fight against King Godwyn being the first instance of a boss using Disruptive Wave, which removes all positive effects from the foe, including tension. Now, King Godwyn is a really interesting boss, because he has 2 forms. The way Dragon Quest IX deals with this is by having a short cutscene between both phases, meaning it's technically 2 separate fights. Between these phases you have no chance to heal or change equipment, so we need to be ready for both phases at the start. His first phase is really tough. If we aren't careful, we can get taken out really fast. His ball attack hits multiple times for around 35 damage each hit, and his thin air attack hits for around 30. Both attacks ignore defense. Kafriz hits for close to 80 damage, and while we can deflect it for around 175 damage, we shouldn't bet on it. Overall, we just need to play it safe and slow, keep on top of our health, and make use of Night Watch every time it's available. With that in mind, King Godwyn's first phase hasn't got that much health, only 1970, so we can get through it relatively quickly. The real challenge should be the second phase. In this phase, Godwyn gains a shield, which lets him block our attacks, a critical hit, and a breath attack, at the cost of his thin air and ball attacks. He also jumps to a monstrous 3,250 health. If you combined both of his phases' health pools into one total health pool, he would have the most health out of any boss in the game, without like grotto bosses or anything being counted. Since he has Disruptive Wave, we can't use tension to deal with his critical hit, and he still does a lot of damage, so how do we deal with the second phase, especially if we enter without being at full health? Well, thankfully he gains a weakness to fire, so our deflected Kefrizis will hit harder, and... Oh. Did I see that right? I really wasn't paying attention. Okay, yeah, so it turns out that Godwyn's critical hit, for some reason, does like 25 damage. I really don't know why, it's barely stronger than his normal attack. So this phase, it turns out, is just a joke. He has more health than phase 1, but deals way less damage. We also deal more damage, and so can just do the same as we did for phase 1, and win. With Godwyn defeated, we can free Corvus, get clapped, and give chase all the way to the Realm of the Mighty, a corruption of the Realm of the Almighty. But before we get a chance at revenge, we have to take out the 3 members of the Triumvirate again. None of these fights are different, the only changes between them is that they're slightly weaker than the previous fights. Hootingham Gore's the hardest because he's got magic, but he doesn't have his cronies this time. Also, with past Small knowing about tension at this point, Gorham Hogg and Goresby Purvis are easy enough. And with that, we face Corvus. Corvus has 2,790 health and takes 25% more damage from fire and lightning. So far, so good. His basic attack and nosedive deal insignificant damage. Also good. Terrible Lightning does 27 damage. Doesn't matter. Kaswoosh deals 100 damage. That's really annoying, but we can manage it. Disruptive Wave stops us using tension, but he doesn't have a critical hit move, so that's really not a problem. Sometimes he just laughs at us, but joke's on him, that just wastes his turn. He can also boost his tension, but he uses it so infrequently that he rarely gets above 5 tension, so again, it doesn't matter. For what is basically the final boss's first form, this fight's really not that bad. We're so tanky that he can't really kill us, and while our damage is still non-existent, he doesn't heal, so it's just a matter of time until we win. A matter of 27 minutes, actually. After the fight, Corvus runs away to power up, and we give chase. But before we can take on Corvus's final form, we need to take down Barbarous. Revenge for shooting us out of the sky twice. Barbarous is another pretty easy fight. He's got a lot of health with just over 3,000, and he's not weak to lightning damage, but just like the previous 4 fights, he can't really deal that much damage. Kazam hits for around 75, which isn't terrifying, and his basic claw attack and claw slash tickle us. His Dark Breath hits for around 50 to 60 damage, so again, really not that bad. He doesn't have Disruptive Wave, so I thought I could use Tension to trivialise him, but he can immobilise us with his Roar, so it's still not a great option. Doesn't matter though, because again, he doesn't do that much damage. If we get low, we heal, otherwise we attack. It's kind of been the strategy for the past few fights, in fact actually all of the fights. Not that there is much strategy to be had when we deal 25 damage per turn. And with that, it is time. Time to face the final boss. Let's see if this is actually possible. Let's go. And holy fuck, he can heal for 500 health. Well, that was fun. Run's dead. Can't do it. It is not possible to beat Dragon Quest IX by only dealing damage with items. I'm kidding, obviously. Let's look at what Corvus can do. Corvus has 4,800 health, which is an insane leap from the last fight. And as we saw, he can heal himself for 500 health. This is a recipe for disaster, as it sets us back roughly 13 to 20 turns each use. Fortunately, it's also the start of a pattern of moves that we can exploit. When Corvus heals, he either finishes his turn by laughing at us, or he'd already done something else before healing. On the turn following the heal, he will always use Magic Burst, draining his MP to deal around 200 damage. Afterwards, he'll put us to sleep with the same move as Hootingham Gore. On the final turn of the pattern, he restores his MP and then does a random move. This pattern is the only time Corvus will use Magic Burst, and since we know when he'll use it, we can prepare for it. By using the Defending Champion ability, we can reduce the damage we take from 200 to 15. This essentially makes this part of the fight a safe zone where we can heal a little bit of health with the Life Bracer, a small condolence given that the thing that starts the pattern is Corvus healing for 500 health. Something else that makes the fight a bit more bearable is that Corvus is actually weak to lightning damage, taking 25% more damage. This isn't actually mentioned in any of the wikis, so I don't know if I'm the first to discover this, or if it was already known somewhere. The real threat of the fight is his critical attack. Once again, if we had that book, we wouldn't have to worry about this, but oh well, we can't get it. The crit can't one-shot us, but Corvus can use it twice in a row to basically achieve the same result. His Freezing Blizzard and Kafriz deal around 70 damage each, and if we reflect his Kafriz, we can deal around 225 to 250 damage. Corvus likes to use these two moves together in a less strict pattern. He basically just enters a state where he chooses these two moves more frequently for a few turns. His other damaging moves aren't that scary. Lightning Storm's about 50 damage, Dark Breath's about the same as well, but he basically never uses them. The real issue is the status conditions. As mentioned, Corvus can put us to sleep. We can't do anything about this because it's the same move as Hooting Gore, so the Rousing Ring doesn't work on it. He can also paralyse us with Burning Breath, but it's not 100% accurate. Since we're by ourselves here, if we get slept or paralysed, we're left wide open for a massive crit or magic burst, and while Night Watch can help, it's not online often enough to make the fight any less inconsistent. Thankfully, at this point of the game, paralysis and sleep aren't as bad thanks to our Life Bracer and overwhelming bulk, so outside of the crit or magic burst, we should actually be okay. The basic issue of this fight is that we either die really fast, or we never kill Corvus. He never kills us, and we spend 10 hours on one attempt. Not that I ever let it get that long, I just reset after like an hour. With that realisation, I decided to break the optional challenge rule and bring Medium back from retirement. This fight's probably possible with one character, but I really cannot be bothered to do it. This makes 2 fights where I was not able to follow our optional challenge, and honestly, that's really impressive, especially since the Master of None would just be a matter of grinding alchemy ingredients. With Medium back in the team, I need to get him geared up and leveled up, and I take the opportunity to do the same for Small. After bringing Medium up to the same level as Small, which took ages because again, no Metal Slimes or Metal Slime variants. Thanks to skill points, both characters now have a 6% boost to their block chance, an extra 100 MP when using a wand, and automatically regen a little bit of MP at the end of each turn. This really does matter because the Magma Staff is our weapon of choice here, and it's a wand, as well as having 160 extra health, 110 extra resilience, pretty much defense, 210 extra magical mending, and 40 more MP on top of what we get from using a wand. Our equipment is as follows. Both characters have a Magma Staff, Silver Shield, Catoptric Armour, Ethereal Gloves, Red Tights, and a Life Bracer. Small has the Dragon Warrior Helmet and Boots, while Medium has a Mithril Helm and the safest shoes. With this equipment, Small has a 37% resistance to fire damage, 35% resistance to lightning damage, 20% resistance to dark damage, and 10% resistance to ice damage. Medium has the same resistances as Small, minus the 10% fire and dark that Small gets from wearing the 2 Dragon Warrior pieces. Let's talk about the winning attempt, which took 45 minutes. With our Magma Staffs, we deal 25 to 37 damage per character, a total of about 50 to 74 damage per turn. This gives us a theoretical range of 65 to 96 turns to beat Corvus. With 2 characters instead of 1, the turns that would be spent asleep or paralysed doing nothing are instead spent healing or dealing damage, massively increasing both our survivability and damage output. Thanks to the passive MP regen for holding a wand, we don't actually need to bring Magic Waters or Sage's Elixirs to this fight, improving our menuing time, preventing mistakes and wasted turns, and it also means we have effectively infinite MP so long as we use it sparingly. In fact, with how strong our characters are now, we're pretty much unkillable. Both have around 450 max health, so even 2 crits will sometimes not be enough to take us out, and if someone does get crit, then we can have them use Defending Champion to not get killed while the other character heals them back to basically full health. The fight at this point basically boils down to a battle of attrition, just like pretty much every other fight in the run, except what? The Hexagon? play it safe and we can't lose. It's just a matter of time and patience until we win, and a little bit of good luck doesn't go amiss. And with that said, let's play the rest of the winning attempt in the background while I talk about my thoughts on the challenge. Honestly, this challenge was surprisingly fun. It forced me to think outside the box more than you'd expect, and anytime I found a new tool to use or got a new weapon, I was pretty excited. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that anyone else does this. It's pretty hard and can be mind-numbingly boring at times, and of course the main issue behind this is the lack of damage. The fact that the best we can deal is 25 to 35 damage from the Icicle Dark, and basically every boss past the White Knight has an insane amount of health, makes this challenge something nobody should have ever done. The game was designed around 4 characters all dealing like a few hundred damage per turn. The bosses are meant to take like 10 turns each, not 100. If there was any way to boost your damage output outside of bosses' weakness to certain attributes, this challenge would be way easier and way more manageable. Instead, you have to rely on a 20% chance for a spell to reflect for most of your damage output in the late game. And the worst part of the challenge by far is that you can't farm metal slimes or their variants for XP. Your attacks are treated like spells by the game, so metal slimes are immune to them. The time it took me to level up medium for the final fight was agony. As for the mechanic of using items and equipment in battle itself, like, why does it even exist outside of healing? As we've all seen throughout this challenge, the damage is pitiful for any point of the game outside like the very start. There's a handful of weapons that even have this type of effect in the game, and there are only 2 consumables that deal damage. Holy Water, which I am thankful for, as otherwise this run would never have happened, and Rock Bomb Shards, which are obtained late enough in the game that you would only ever use them out of curiosity. In fact, that's where I got the idea for this challenge. I was doing a quest where you needed to use an item in battle to defeat an enemy and wondered, how viable are they? The only use case I can see for this mechanic is if your mage has run out of MP to cast spells, you at least have this as a backup option. But at that point, just attack the enemy with your wand to steal some MP so you can cast spells again. Or use any other way to get MP. Magic Water, abilities, the wand skill that I used for the Corvus fight that passively regens your MP. Now, once we did get the ship, the challenge wasn't as difficult. That part of the game's pretty easy as is because of the freedom the ship gives you to get alchemy ingredients. But until then, we had to make the most of everything available to us. Buying Holy Water to speed up the White Knight, Morag, the Raging Contagion, the Master of None, spending hours farming Holy Water in the beginning and later farming for materials for the foe and fan, only to give up on it in favour of just fighting the Master of None and ignoring the extra challenge to save time. And worst of all, Tyrantula, having our only weapon be resisted and dealing bad damage even before factoring in that resistance. The damage output of Tyrantula, the poison, the web, all while our options for healing were so limited. I mean, theoretically we could have farmed stone golems in the Heights of Loneliness for Resurrect to make the life bracer sooner, which would have made the fight a lot more manageable, but every single part of that fight for this challenge was torture. Then, once we get all the figs, we have what is effectively a boss rush, where every other boss either has a critical hit that deals massive damage, hits you with a bunch of stats, conditions and magic, has a bunch of attacks that ignore defense, some combination of the above, or even all of the above with Corvus. And honestly, Corvus would have been fine if it weren't for his healing. He has about the same health as both forms of King Godwyn together, but because he can heal 500 health at a time, the fight got turned into a battle of attrition in his favour. I am glad that I got that out of my system. The fight's just about over now, so I'll finish off by thanking you all for watching and declaring that, yes, it is possible to beat Dragon Quest IX by only dealing damage with items, with a massive asterisk thanks to Ivor. If you want to see more content like this or have ideas for any other challenges you'd like to see, let me know in the comments section below. I'm thinking I might try beating the grotto bosses under this rule set as well, although I can already see that taking a really long time given the randomness of grottos, and I think at least one of the bosses is probably impossible anyway. Anyway, once again, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again whenever I happen to make another video.